If someone handed you a piece of paper and a pen right now and nobody was watching and asked you to write down the one lie that's been running your career, what would you write? Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. Last week, in that episode, I explored David Cook's, to me, incredible book, Golf's Sacred Journey, 7 Days in the Links of Utopia. And I shared some of the broader lessons from that book. And I highly recommend to you that you consider getting it and reading it, particularly if you like golf, but even if you don't, because the book contains so many lessons, not only for our professional lives, but our personal lives. And today we're going to dive deep into the single chapter that hit me the hardest. It's really the culmination of the book. Chapter 9, Buried Lies. It is the emotional climax of the entire book, where the broken golfer is told to write down the lies that have been running his life and quite literally bury them in the ground that his mentor dug for him. And I'm recording this from Pinehurst, North Carolina. I'm looking out of my window at beautiful Pinehurst number 9. I'm surrounded by golf courses. And when I read this chapter, though, I didn't see a golfer. I saw every successful lawyer I've ever coached, and indeed many of those that I've known and haven't coached. But more than that, I saw myself. By the end of this episode, you will understand why you can win case after case after case and still feel like you're only one loss away from being exposed. But more importantly, you will know what to do about it. So a little bit about me. I've been practicing law for 46 years, mostly in litigation. I had 30 plus years as a managing partner in my boutique litigation firm. I clerked in federal court, and I won a series of 12 consecutive trucking cases, some in federal court. I have had a very nice background, but I've lived every bit of what we're about to talk about. I've enjoyed the wins, though realizing that they never, ever felt like enough. And I remember, sadly, the losses that felt like they defined me at that time. Now I coach successful attorneys through exactly this transformation through the Free Lawyer Framework. So let me take you to chapter 9 of the book. The golfer last week, earlier in the book, chapter 1, had a terrible meltdown at a tournament. He was in great shape. He was playing well. He hit a ball in the woods and everything went haywire. He tried to do too much. He went deeper in the woods. The long and the short of it is he had an absolutely humiliating hole. I think he ended up with a 15. And it destroyed that tournament for him. But more than that, it destroyed him. He was completely wiped out by that terrible score. He felt like a loser. He felt like an imposter. But in chapter 8 of the book, the golfer, under the guidance of his mentor, Johnny Crawford, had an amazing round. He kept his mental balance. He kept his focus. Johnny taught him to see it, feel it, and trust it, and he did that. He was riding high, and he expected congratulations from Johnny, from his mentor. But instead, Johnny stops him cold. He tells him, you used yesterday's fine round to validate yourself as a person. But wasn't it just a week ago that you yourself were devastated by a golf score? See, the high and the meltdown are not opposites. They're actually the same condition, because the golfer in 7 Days in Utopia based his whole worth, his whole reality on his success as a golfer. When he got a good score, he felt good about himself. When he had a bad one, he felt like a loser. His self-worth went up and down as the scores fluctuated. When the scores went down, he felt great. But when he had a high score, his self-worth, his belief in himself was devastated. He was trapped on a seesaw, up and down, based on the scores of his golf game. And for those of you who play, trust me, I know I've played for over 55 years. Golf is a very inconsistent game, inside a round, but also comparing one round to the next. It's not very consistent. And this translates well to what we do as lawyers. I've seen that our verdict can become the attorney. The settlement number can become the measure of who we are. Our win-loss score. Getting a motion decided in our favor, but when we lose, we feel like a loser. If we win, if we get the result we win, if we have a great transaction, if we get a ruling we like, if we get a great new client, we feel competent, respected, and safe. But when we lose, when the jury rules against us, the judge grants summary judgment against us, we lose that client. A key associate leaves us. All of a sudden, something is fundamentally broken, not with the case, but with us. And that's what I call the external authority trap. When the outcomes determine our identity, we haven't built confidence at all. All we've done is build a trap door. The cruelest part, and I've learned this to be the case, it does not matter how many times you win. It's not like if you win 4 cases in a row, you're past it. See, that trap door is always there, waiting for the next loss. Having the loss and falling down the hole into the abyss. Let me share a story of something I've experienced in my career. As many of you know, I did a lot of transportation work defending trucking companies and trucking drivers, but since I was a small firm, I had a lot of authority and discretion to take on other cases that I wanted to handle, and I developed a sub-concentration in plaintiff's employment law, and I had some very good results. I had one case against a large Maryland company for age discrimination. My client was named Elizabeth Wilson. It was in federal court. And I worked that case really hard. I thought she had a good case. I thought she was wronged by her employer. I really did. I was very committed to my client. I put my heart and soul into that case. I took depositions very well. And the other side filed a motion for summary judgment. I was a little worried about it, but mostly because of what was at stake. I knew there were questions of intent and motive, and I knew that summary judgment shouldn't be granted. But one day I'm sitting at my desk, and I get the ruling from the court. They had granted summary judgment. They had thrown out my client's entire case. And I was shaken to my core. I stared at that ruling. What did I do wrong? What is wrong with me? How did I miss this? It was terrible, and it stayed with me for quite a long time. My client was very complimentary. She understood that happened, but I was devastated. I continued to be devastated for quite a while. And years later, I spoke to another person who worked in the courthouse who I knew quite well, and I learned that that particular judge had granted summary judgment to every employer in every single discrimination case that had ever been assigned to me. Summary judgment in every one. And I learned that that loss had absolutely nothing to do with me. It didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter how hard I worked. He was going to grant summary judgment. But by then, years of shame had already done its damage. The anger when I found out, and then something worse, the quiet realization of how many years I had wasted blaming myself for that defeat, letting it shake me at my core. In chapter 9 of the book, Johnny leads the golfer to a pre-dug grave at the cemetery of the course. Johnny gives him a paper and a pen. He tells him to write down every lie that has been defining him during his life. Not his weaknesses, not his development areas, not ways he can improve his swing or get better as a golfer. Lies, the internal narratives during his life that he forgot were never true. And the golfer had a lot of them, like his worth is defined by his score. That he's a golfer first and foremost, not a person. The golfer writes them down, a whole list of them. He reads them aloud, and then he buries them. And, I talk to a lot of lawyers. I coach a lot of lawyers. And I've heard so many lies from so many successful attorneys. And here are some of them. If I lose this case, it means I'm not good enough. Boy, did I feel that one. My clients need me available around the clock, or they will find someone else. Who doesn't think that? So many of us do. And the reality is, it's not true. Delegating this matter means I'm risking my reputation. I can't admit I'm struggling, not at my level. So many lawyers are hesitant to admit that they're struggling. Winning is what makes me valuable. Everything else is secondary. My family understands because they know how important my work is. And this is the key insight. Those are not truths. They're not. They are lies dressed up as professionalism. The last one even sounds noble, like a sacrifice your family is honored to make. But underneath those lies are the bars of a prison that no amount of winning can unlock. I have one wonderful client I represent, simply an incredible man and an amazing lawyer, incredibly accomplished. He's won so many cases. He's done such great work for his clients. But his excellence and experience in preparation has been hijacked by this relentless need to control how others perceive him. He over-prepares obsessively. He worries excessively, not because the case demands it, but because he's trying to prepare his way out of anxiety that no amount of preparation can ever touch. And I admire him so much, a great lawyer, but he's so concerned about what others think about him, particularly if he were to lose a case, which candidly almost never happens. See, a lawyer like that, he's not preparing for cases. He's not preparing his matter for trial. He's preparing for judgment. And not the kind that a judge or jury gives him, but judgment of himself based on what he thinks others are thinking. And that's the external authority trap in a top performer. It's not incompetence, but it's excellence that is running on the wrong fuel. If what I'm describing sounds familiar to you, if you are a successful attorney who's built an incredible career, but you're quietly exhausted by the weight of it, I want you to know that's exactly who I work with. Head over to GaryMiles.net and schedule a courtesy coaching call. No pitch, no pressure. Just one attorney talking to another about what's really going on. And the link is in the description. So David Cook uses the analogy of a buried lie. And in golf, a buried lie is, and if you play golf, you've had it, it's when your ball plugs deep in a bunker. Normally the ball might rest right on top of the sand. It's still a challenge, but sometimes the ball is half submerged in sand, buried deep in the sand. And our instinct is to be cautious, to try to dig it out of the sand carefully, to play it safe, but that's exactly wrong. A buried lie demands aggressive commitment forward. You have to visualize the path, trust the swing, and go through it with force. Tentative never works. You go through it or you stay stuck in the sand. And I've seen lawyers who tiptoe. They read an article about burnout and they think, well, that makes sense. Or they go to a wellness COE and they nod at that being good advice. Or they tell themselves they will set boundaries after their next case. Always next quarter, always later, never through it. See, a buried lie doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to committed action. And naming these lies matter. See, the lies survive because they stay hidden where no one can challenge them. You've never written, my worth depends on my win rate on paper and stared at it. You've never said, I'm only as good as my last verdict out loud. See, those lies thrive in the dark, and naming them starts to strip their power. My lie was not abstract. I swear I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting at my desk with the Wilson ruling, convinced the loss proved something permanent about who I was, a loser. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that I knew intellectually every lawyer loses cases. That lie operated below the intellectual. It lived in my gut, and it ran my emotional life. And naming it, really naming it, not just acknowledging it, was the beginning of a different way of practicing and a different way of living. Johnny tells the golfer, bearing your lies is only half the transformation. The other half is replacing them with truth. When I named my lie and put it down, what replaced it was a confidence I'd never actually experienced, even during winning streaks. Old confidence was always conditional. It depended on the next verdict. If I lost, it was destroyed. But my new confidence was not conditional. See, I was no longer controlled by the fear of the outcome. I knew in my bones, I knew in my heart, not just intellectually, that my dedication, my commitment, and my effort is what truly counted. The results did not determine who I was. My effort did. And to my surprise, I became a better trial lawyer, not a worse one. I was more relaxed. I was more present. I was more engaged. I was more effective, more confident, more resilient. And when you stop spending half your mental energy managing the terror of what a loss will say about you, you have so much more to give the case and the client. The fear had been telling me it was protecting me and keeping me sharp. But that was the biggest lie. The fear was not fuel. The fear was a huge weight on my back. And when I set it down, I could finally move. In the Free Lawyer Framework, I talk about 3 shifts. The first is from external authority to internal authority. Confidence rooted in your preparation, your competence, and your character, rather than the verdict or the outcome. A transformation from perfectionist performance to sustainable excellence. Practicing at a high level because you choose to, not because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. And from compulsive work to conscious choice. Redesigning your practice to reflect your values rather than someone else's expectations. And Johnny the mentor tells the golfer in chapter 9, life in the end will be measured by significance, not a golf score. Your life will be measured by your significance, not your results. And our profession reinforces the scoreboard relentlessly. All the awards. Nobody asks, does your work mean something to you beyond whether you won? I know of a managing partner who used, like so many, just looked at billable hours, but he changed his perspective. He started focusing on how the lawyers built effective client relationships, how the effort they put forth on behalf of their clients, not just billable hours and not just wins and losses, but effort and relationships and growth. And his firm became more successful, not less. So I'll ask you again, as I did in the beginning, if you had a piece of paper and you were to write the biggest lie that controls you down on that piece of paper, what would you write? The amazing thing is, Cook's Buried Lies Ritual didn't stay in his book. Thousands of readers have emailed their lies to be buried at the links of Utopia Cemetery. That's his significance. And it works because confrontation is the first step toward freedom. And most people have never been given permission to confront what's truly been controlling them. I carried my lie for years. Naming it and bearing it did not make me a worse lawyer. It made me a free one. My career got better, not worse, when I stopped letting a scoreboard tell me who I was. The grave is dug. The pen and paper are in your hand. What will you write? If this episode hits home for you the way Chapter 9 hit home for me, I want to hear from you. Send me one sentence. I'm going to ask you, just send me one single sentence. The lie you would write on that piece of paper. Email to me at gary@garymiles.net. No pitch, no follow-up unless you want one. Just one attorney telling his truth to another. And that's how every transformation I've witnessed has started, including my own. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you want to explore what it looks like to shift from external authority to internal authority, head to GaryMiles.net and schedule a courtesy coaching call. I'd love to talk with you. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave me a review, because it helps other attorneys find this message. And share with a colleague who might need to hear it today. You can also find me both on YouTube and on the Free Lawyer Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. So until next time, practice law with purpose and live your life with freedom.